person being interviewed at this time is Johhny Johnson. And what was your plan once you'd finished having sex with her?
To kill her.
A man who murdered a 6-year-old Valley Park girl 21 years ago today will not be executed August 1st. A stay of execution is ordered, and that happened yesterday.
With each passing moment, Johhny Johnson's case is getting more complex. He's accused of sexually assaulting and murdering an innocent child back in 2002. Johhny was just a week away from his execution date of August 1st, 2023. Justice was about to be served when a shocking revelation emerged. His lawyers claim that a neuropsychiatrist's assessment has revealed a troubling truth. He might not fully understand the reasons for his impending punishment. On Tuesday afternoon, July 25th, he was granted a stay on his execution. As the world watches, a gripping question hangs in the air. Is Johhny truly suffering from his afflictions? Or could his life be hanging by a thread caught in the web of deceit? Let's find out.
Before you right now lies the body of a precious little girl.
It was one of those cases where it just seems like when you look back on it, you can think, well, of course something terrible is going to happen.
Cassandra Williamson, nicknamed Casey, was a bright 6-year-old young girl with an infectious smile. She was a kindergartner living her innocent life. Little did she know that her life was headed toward a chilling end. Cassandra's parents, Ernie and Angela Williamson, were separated but still spent some nights together for the children. They had 3 other children. In July 2002, the entire family gathered at a friend's house just across the street from Cassandra's grandparents' place. Mrs. Williamson and the children were living there at the time. Cassandra's grandfather, Jim Wildeman, mentioned that Mr. Johnson had also stayed at the friend's house that night. It turns out that Johhny, 24-year-old drifter and ex-convict back then, was having a casual couch sleepover, as it was his friend's place. When Casey's father woke up the following day, he saw Casey with Johnson. He went to the restroom, but when he returned to pour his daughter some morning cereal, they were both gone.
We agree that it was premeditated. Can you think of any worse crime that could have been committed?
As time went by, her parents got worried. The disappearance sparked a frantic search, with dozens of volunteers joining the police. They started combing through the woods and along the banks of the nearby Merrimack River. Everyone was desperately hoping to find Casey alive. But things were already taking a dreadful turn. According to witnesses, they had seen Johnson with the little girl that morning. This raised suspicions instantly about his involvement in her disappearance.
If anybody had asked me, all of my clients, if one of my clients was going to do this, Johhny wouldn't have been even on the top 10 list of clients who would have done this.
The hope of finding Casey safe was diminishing with every passing moment.
This news story about a young girl going missing, and I remember laying in the bed in the hospital, and there was Johhny Johnson on the news.
Then, a grim discovery was made. Casey's lifeless body was found buried in a pit, concealed beneath rocks and debris in an abandoned glass factory less than a mile from her home. The entire community was left in shock and grief.
Volunteers and police started a frantic search. They found the 6-year-old's body less than a mile from her home in a shallow grave under some rocks.
All the evidence and witnesses pointed towards Johnson. A few hours later, the police caught Johhny Johnson. At first, he tried to blame a falling rock for hurting Casey, but the weight of his guilt became too heavy. Eventually, he gave a full and chilling confession, sharing all the horrifying details of his heartless crime. The cold and calculated way he acted sent shivers down everyone's spine. It was revealed that Johnson had an evil plan in mind that day. After waking up, he saw the little girl watching television. He thought it was the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the innocent child. However, he knew he would have to kill her to cover his tracks. So he asked Casey if she wanted to play games and have fun at the glass factory. Innocently, she agreed, and they went there together.
Johhny Johnson confessed to her brutal murder in court. He said Casey fought back against his attempts to sexually assault her, and that he used bricks and rocks to beat her to death.
They found a sunken pit with tall walls as they entered the woods leading to the factory. Johnson and Casey crawled through a small tunnel and ended up inside the pit. That's when the nightmare began. John tried to force himself on the child, but she bravely fought back, kicking and screaming. He got angrier and decided to end her life. Using a brick, he hit Casey in the head multiple times, causing her to bleed and bruise. She tried to run away despite being hurt, but Johnson struck her repeatedly with the brick. Finally, he used a huge boulder to crush her head, causing severe injuries. Casey couldn't breathe for too long after that, and soon passed away. The innocent little girl was no more. At the trial, Johnson did not deny the act, but argued that he couldn't deliberate due to his mental disorder. However, the jury did not take his claims into consideration after hearing the gruesome details. They found him guilty of first-degree murder. They gave him the death penalty and life sentences for other crimes. His execution date was set for August the 1st, 2023, but his defense tried to prove he was mentally unstable to avoid it. They said a medical test showed he had mental health issues, and Johhny said he heard voices telling him to hurt and kill the child. Do you think he was telling the truth?
So the question really there was just no dispute that he had mental illness. Even the prosecutors essentially conceded that. So the question was, what role did that mental illness play in the events of killing Casey?
People have been debating over the defense's stance on whether his mental problems were genuine or just a way to escape punishment. What do you think?
And the only way to make it more horrible would be to put Johhny to death. With a guy whose brain doesn't work, the state just shouldn't kill him.
Is executing someone with mental issues cruel and against humanity? Or is it the fitting punishment for the terrible crimes he committed? The most important question of all is he faking it? Hit that shiny red subscribe button to stay tuned to this case and its developments.
This case is a horror, and the only way to make it more horrible with a guy whose brain doesn't work.
In a gripping turn of events, the Missouri inmate has been granted a temporary stay. The U.S. Court of Appeals voted 2-1 to stay his execution. This was followed by a request to overturn it that the Missouri Supreme Court denied last month. Johnson's lawyers can also challenge his conviction now, thanks to the stay. They can argue that he is mentally incompetent. Demonstrators delivered a petition to stop the execution, citing flaws in the case and inadequate treatment for Johnson's disabilities and mental illness. Can you imagine the grief of the victim's family?
Died and be like, oh, well, how can you be for the death penalty, and how can you be that kind of person? But if you live the reality of it, you might feel differently.
The fate of Johhny Johnson remains uncertain as the legal battle continues. Will justice be served for his heinous crime, or will he escape the death penalty by claiming mental illness? Only time will tell. In a gripping turn of events, the Missouri inmate was granted a temporary stay. The U.S. Court of Appeals voted 2-1 to stay his execution. Can you imagine the grief of the victim's family? However, on Saturday, July 29th, the Missouri Supreme Court declined the halt. According to the court, the claims by Johnson's lawyers are baseless because he's able to manage his mental health issues with medicines. So it seems like despite all this drama, Johhny Johnson will be paying for his crime after all. The execution is scheduled for the 1st of August, 2023. Will there be more twists and turns? Can we expect a last-minute plot twist in this case? Guess we'll find it all out today.